When my grandson Tyler called my daily routine NPC behavior and said I was just background noise in his main character story, I knew something had to change. 3 months later, when he discovered his entire trust fund had been redirected to charity, he finally learned that this non-player character had been controlling the game all along. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Eleanor Hartwell, and at 72 years old, I thought I understood the language of love. I'd raised 3 children, buried a husband, and spent the last decade pouring everything I had into my family's future. What I didn't understand was the language of modern disrespect, wrapped in gaming terminology that cut deeper than any insult I'd ever heard. The morning it all started, I was doing what I'd done every Tuesday for the past 5 years since my daughter Katherine moved to Seattle for work. I was preparing Tyler's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, in the kitchen of the sprawling Victorian home in Millfield that had been in our family for 3 generations. Tyler, my 17-year-old grandson, had been living with me since Katherine's divorce 2 years ago, and I'd embraced the role of guardian with the same fierce dedication I'd shown as a young mother. I hummed softly as I whisked the batter, my arthritis making the motion slightly painful but familiar. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times, and I could hear the shower running upstairs. Tyler would be down in exactly 15 minutes, just like every school day. He'd grab his plate, mumble something that might have been thanks, and disappear into his room to eat while staring at one of his many screens. It wasn't the relationship I'd hoped for with my grandson, but I told myself it was normal teenage behavior. After all, what did a 72-year-old woman know about the pressures facing young people today? I'd adapted my entire routine around his schedule, learned to navigate his moods, and even tried to understand his passion for video games, though the violent imagery and constant noise made my head ache. When Tyler finally appeared in the kitchen, his dark hair still damp from the shower, I smiled and set his plate on the counter. He was a handsome boy, tall like his grandfather had been, with Katherine's green eyes and my late husband's stubborn jawline. But lately, those eyes held a coldness that reminded me uncomfortably of his father, the man who'd walked out on Katherine and Tyler without a backward glance. "Morning, sweetheart," I said, pouring fresh orange juice into his favorite glass, the one with the faded baseball logo from a team that had relocated years ago. I made them extra fluffy today. Tyler barely glanced at the pancakes as he scrolled through his phone, his thumbs moving with the kind of practiced speed that fascinated and worried me in equal measure. "Thanks, I guess," he muttered, not looking up. I watched him eat in silence, my own coffee growing cold in my hands. This had become our morning ritual over the past few months. I'd cook, he'd consume, and somehow the distance between us seemed to grow wider with each passing day. I'd tried everything I could think of to connect with him. I'd asked about his friends, his classes, his games. I'd offered to drive him places, to take him shopping, to let him redecorate his room. Nothing seemed to penetrate the wall he'd built around himself. "Tyler," I said gently, settling onto the stool across from him at the kitchen island my husband had built with his own hands 40 years ago. "I was thinking maybe this weekend we could do something together. There's a new exhibit at the art museum downtown. Or we could go to that gaming store you like." He didn't even pause in his eating. "Can't. I'm busy." "Busy with what?" "Maybe I could help, or at least understand what's keeping you so occupied." For the first time that morning, Tyler looked up from his phone, and the expression on his face made my stomach clench. It wasn't anger or frustration, emotions I could have worked with. It was something worse. It was dismissal, the kind of look you might give to a persistent salesperson or an annoying commercial. "Grandma, you wouldn't understand. It's not like your generation actually gets what's important to people my age." The words stung, but I pressed on. "Try me. I might surprise you." Tyler's laugh was harsh and short. "Look, no offense, but your whole thing is just so NPC. Like, you wake up, make breakfast, clean the house, watch your boring TV shows, make dinner, go to bed. Repeat forever. That's literally non-player character behavior. You're just background noise in other people's actual lives." I felt something cold settle in my chest. What does that mean exactly? It means you're not the main character of anything. You just exist to serve other people's storylines. Like an NPC in a video game. They're just there to give the real players what they need, but they don't actually matter. They don't have their own stories or goals or anything interesting about them. Tyler returned to his phone as if he'd just commented on the weather, but his words hit me like a physical blow. In one casual moment, my grandson had reduced my entire existence to that of a background character, someone whose only purpose was to facilitate his life while having no value or substance of my own. I sat there in stunned silence as he finished his breakfast, grabbed his backpack, and headed toward the front door. "I'm staying at Derek's tonight," he called over his shoulder. "Don't wait up." The front door slammed with a finality that seemed to echo through every room of the house, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of his words. NPC behavior. Background noise. Not the main character of anything. I looked around the kitchen that had been the heart of family gatherings for decades, at the walls covered with photos of graduations and birthdays and holidays, at the recipe cards stained with decades of use, and for the first time in my life, I wondered if Tyler might be right. Had I become nothing more than a service provider, someone who existed only to meet other people's needs while sacrificing any sense of personal purpose or identity? The thought was terrifying because it felt uncomfortably close to the truth. Since moving Tyler in, I'd structured my entire existence around his schedule, his preferences, his needs. I cooked his favorite foods, bought his preferred brands, planned my day around his availability. I'd convinced myself this was love, but maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe it was the slow erasure of Eleanor Hartwell in favor of becoming someone's convenient caregiver. I spent the rest of that day moving through my routine like a ghost haunting my own life. I cleaned Tyler's room, washed his clothes, restocked his bathroom supplies, and prepared his favorite dinner, even though he wouldn't be home to eat it. Every action felt mechanical, purposeless, exactly like the NPC behavior he'd described. That evening, I sat in my late husband's recliner, staring at the family photos arranged on the mantelpiece above the fireplace. There was my wedding day, radiant and hopeful at 22. There was Katherine's birth, me holding my daughter with fierce pride and joy. There were Christmas mornings and Easter egg hunts and birthday parties, a lifetime of moments when I'd been undeniably the main character of my own story. When had that changed? When had I stopped being Eleanor the person and become Eleanor the convenience? I thought about my husband Robert, how he'd always encouraged my independence even after we married. He'd supported my decision to go back to school in my 30s, had celebrated when I'd started my small catering business, had insisted I maintain my friendships and hobbies even as we raised our children. Robert had seen me as a complete person, not just a wife and mother, but as someone with dreams and ambitions and value beyond what I could provide for others. After Robert died 8 years ago, I'd thrown myself into family relationships as a way to cope with
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Grief. I'd moved Tyler in when Katherine needed help, and gradually his needs had become my entire focus. I'd stopped seeing my friends, stopped pursuing my interests, stopped thinking of myself as anything other than Tyler's grandmother and Katherine's mother. Tyler's words had been cruel, but they'd also been observant in a way that made me deeply uncomfortable. I had been living like an NPC, existing primarily to facilitate other people's lives while neglecting my own growth and purpose. But here's what Tyler didn't understand, what his 17-year-old mind couldn't grasp yet. NPCs might seem like background characters, but in any well-designed game, they control more than players realize. They set the rules, determine the rewards, and decide who gets access to what resources. And Tyler was about to learn that this particular NPC had been managing a very important game mechanic, his financial future. The next morning, Tyler returned home just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee. He looked tired and slightly hungover, his clothes wrinkled from sleeping on Derek's couch. He mumbled something that might have been a greeting and headed straight for the shower. When he emerged an hour later, I was waiting in the living room with a stack of papers on the coffee table in front of me. "Tyler, we need to talk," he groaned dramatically. "Grandma, I'm really not in the mood for a lecture about responsibility or whatever. This isn't a lecture. It's a conversation about your future. Something in my tone must have caught his attention because he actually looked at me instead of immediately retreating to his room. I gestured to the chair across from me, and after a moment's hesitation, he sat down. Tyler, yesterday you told me that I was exhibiting NPC behavior, that I was just background noise in other people's real lives. I've been thinking about that, and I wanted to discuss what you meant. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I didn't mean it to be mean or anything. It's just, you do the same things every day. It's predictable. I see. And in your view, what would make someone a main character instead of an NPC? Tyler seemed to relax, apparently thinking this was going to be easier than he'd expected. Well, main characters have agency, They make decisions that actually matter. They have goals, and they work toward them. They don't just exist to serve other people. That's interesting. So agency and meaningful goals are what separate main characters from NPCs. Exactly. I nodded thoughtfully and reached for the papers on the coffee table. Tyler, are you familiar with the trust fund your grandfather established for you? The question clearly caught him off guard. Kind of. Mom mentioned it a few times. It's for college and stuff, right? Among other things? Yes. Your grandfather left specific instructions about how and when you'd gain access to the money. He believed very strongly that financial resources should be earned through character development and personal growth, not simply handed over based on age. Tyler's attention was fully engaged now, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by sharp focus. Okay, so what does that mean exactly? It means that the trust fund isn't automatically yours when you turn 18, as you might have assumed. Release of the funds is contingent on meeting certain criteria that demonstrate maturity, responsibility, and respect for family values. I could see the wheels turning in Tyler's mind as he processed this information. What kind of criteria? The trust specifies several requirements: academic achievement, community service, demonstration of financial responsibility, and what your grandfather called honoring family bonds. He was very specific about that last part. Tyler's face had gone slightly pale. And who decides if I've met these requirements? The trustee has complete discretion in that determination. I paused, letting the weight of that settle. Tyler, I am the trustee. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler stared at me with dawning comprehension, his earlier casual dismissal of my importance suddenly taking on a very different significance. You're saying you control whether I get the money? I'm saying that your grandfather entrusted me with the responsibility of determining when you've demonstrated the character qualities he believed were essential for managing significant financial resources responsibly. Tyler's mouth opened and closed several times as he struggled to process this revelation. How much money are we talking about? The current value of the trust is approximately $2.8 million. The number hit Tyler like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again, as the full implications of our conversation began to sink in. He'd just called the person who controlled his financial future an irrelevant background character. Grandma, I didn't mean... Oh, but you did mean it, Tyler. And that's exactly the problem. I stood up and gathered the papers, noting how Tyler's eyes tracked my every movement with new attention and respect. For the past 2 years, you've treated me like a convenience. Someone who exists solely to serve your needs while contributing nothing of value to your life. You've dismissed my attempts at connection, shown contempt for my daily efforts to care for you, and yesterday you made it crystal clear that you view me as nothing more than a service provider with no intrinsic worth or importance. Tyler started to speak, but I held up a hand to stop him. I want you to understand something very clearly. Your grandfather didn't just leave you money, Tyler. He left you an opportunity to become the kind of person he believed you could be. Someone who understands that wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege. Someone who recognizes that the people who love and support us deserve respect and consideration, not dismissal and contempt. I walked toward the doorway, then turned back to face my grandson, who was sitting frozen in his chair like someone who just realized they'd been playing a game with rules they never bothered to learn. You called my behavior predictable and meaningless, but here's what you failed to understand. Every meal I've cooked, every ride I've given you, every time I've adjusted my schedule to accommodate yours, those weren't NPC actions. Those were choices made by someone who loves you and believed you were worth the investment of time and energy. Tyler's eyes were wide with shock and what might have been the beginning of understanding. You have a choice to make now, Tyler. You can continue treating the people who care about you as irrelevant background characters in your personal story, or you can start recognizing that meaningful relationships require mutual respect and consideration. Your grandfather's trust fund will be available to you when you demonstrate that you understand the difference. I left him sitting there and went to the kitchen to start preparing lunch, my hands surprisingly steady despite the magnitude of what had just transpired. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like the main character of my own story again. Tyler didn't come down for lunch. Or dinner. I could hear him pacing in his room, the floorboards creaking with the rhythm of someone trying to walk off panic. Around 9 o'clock, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. "Grandma, can we talk?" I was sitting in bed reading the same mystery novel I'd been trying to finish for 3 weeks, but kept getting interrupted by Tyler's various needs and demands. "Of course. Come in." Tyler entered hesitantly, looking younger than his 17 years. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by uncertainty and what might have been genuine remorse. He sat on the edge of my bed like he used to do as a little boy when he'd had a nightmare. "I looked up the trust fund online," he said quietly. "I found some of the legal documents Mom had stored in her cloud folder." "And what did you discover?" "That Grandpa Robert was really specific about the whole character thing. Like, really specific." Tyler's voice was barely above a whisper. "And that you've been managing my education fund and living expenses this whole time. The private school tuition, the car insurance, the money for clothes and games and stuff. That all comes from you." I nodded but didn't speak, letting him work through the implications himself. I also found the part about how if the trustee determines that the beneficiary lacks the moral character to handle the inheritance responsibly, the funds can be redirected to charitable organizations that align with the family's values. Your grandfather was very thorough in his planning. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. "Grandma, how bad did I mess up?" The question was asked with such genuine vulnerability that my heart ached for him. This was the boy I remembered, the one who used to help me in the garden and ask endless questions about everything from why flowers bloomed to how airplanes stayed in the sky. "Tyler, you're 17 years old. You're supposed to make mistakes and learn from them. But the mistake you made wasn't just being rude or dismissive. You revealed something about how you view other people, particularly people who care about you. That's the kind of thinking that concerns me as a trustee and breaks my heart as your grandmother. What if I can't fix it? What if you decide I'm too selfish or immature?" I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance, but all I saw was genuine fear and regret. "Tyler, do you understand why your words hurt me so deeply?" He nodded slowly. "Because I made you feel like you don't matter. Like everything you do for me doesn't count because it's just expected, not appreciated. That's part of it. But it's also because you demonstrated a fundamental lack of empathy. You reduced my entire existence to a series of functions without considering that I'm a complete person with my own thoughts, feelings, and experiences." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "I don't actually think that about you, Grandma. I was just being stupid and trying to sound cool. I know you have your own life and interests and stuff." "Do you? Can you tell me what those interests are?" The silence stretched between us as Tyler struggled to answer. Finally, he shook his head. "I don't know. I never asked." "When's my birthday, Tyler?" Another long pause. "I don't remember." "What's my favorite color? What kind of music do I like? What did I study in college? What was my job before I retired?" Each question hung in the air like an accusation, and with each one, Tyler seemed to shrink smaller. "I don't know any of that." "But you know I'll always have your breakfast ready on time, that I'll drive you wherever you need to go, that I'll have your favorite snacks stocked in the pantry." "Yes. So you know me as a service provider, but not as a person." That's exactly what NPC behavior is, Tyler. You've interacted with me as if I'm a program designed to meet your needs, not as a human being with my own depth and complexity. Tyler was crying openly now, not the dramatic tears of a teenager trying to manipulate a situation, but the genuine sorrow of someone confronting their own failures. How do I fix this? How do I show you that I can be better? I reached over and took his hand, surprised by how much larger it had grown since he'd moved in with me. You start by actually seeing me, Tyler. You ask questions and listen to the answers. You show interest in my life beyond how it serves yours. You demonstrate that you understand relationships are reciprocal, not transactional. And then you'll release the trust fund? I squeezed his hand gently. Tyler, if your only motivation for treating me better is to access money, then you've missed the entire point of this conversation. The trust fund isn't a reward for good behavior. It's a responsibility that should only be given to someone who understands that wealth and privilege come with obligations to treat others with dignity and respect. Tyler nodded, wiping his eyes with his free hand. I think I understand. It's not about earning the money. It's about becoming the kind of person who deserves it. Exactly. Grandma, will you tell me about yourself? Like, really tell me? I want to know who you are, not just what you do for me. I smiled, feeling something that had been broken between us beginning to mend. I'd like that very much, but first, tell me about yourself. Not your gaming achievements or your social media followers, but who Tyler really is when he's not performing for anyone else. We talked until nearly midnight, and for the first time in years, it felt like a real conversation between two people who were genuinely interested in understanding each other. Tyler told me about his fears regarding college and his future, his struggles with making genuine friends, his confusion about his parents, divorce, and his father's abandonment. I shared stories about my childhood, my dreams that had been deferred but never completely abandoned, my own struggles with finding purpose after Robert's death. When Tyler finally went to bed, I sat in the quiet house thinking about second chances and the difference between punishment and natural consequences. Tyler hadn't lost his inheritance because I was angry with him. He'd lost it because he'd demonstrated that he wasn't ready for the responsibility that came with it. But readiness could be developed, character could be built, and understanding could be cultivated. The real question was whether Tyler truly wanted to change, or whether he'd simply learned to perform differently to achieve his goals. Over the next few weeks, I watched for signs that would answer that question. Tyler began asking about my day when he came home from school, not just rattling off his own experiences and problems. He offered to help with household tasks without being asked, though his attempts at cooking were endearingly disastrous. He started staying home in the evenings more often, engaging in conversations about everything from politics to family history. But most importantly, he began treating me like a person with my own interests and agency. He asked if I wanted to watch certain TV shows together instead of automatically changing the channel to his preferences. He inquired about my book club and actually listened when I described the novels we were reading. He even suggested we visit the art museum together, remembering that I'd mentioned wanting to see the new exhibition. The change felt genuine, but I knew that real transformation took time to solidify, and Tyler's ultimate test was yet to come. That test arrived on a Thursday afternoon in the form of an unexpected phone call from Katherine. She was coming home for the weekend and wanted to discuss Tyler's future plans, including college applications and financial arrangements. "Mom, I've been thinking," Katherine said during our conversation. "Tyler's going to be 18 in a few months, and I want to make sure we have everything sorted out with Dad's trust fund. I assume we just need to file some paperwork to transfer control to Tyler when he turns 18? I could hear Tyler moving around upstairs, and I wondered if he was listening to our conversation. "Actually, Katherine, it's more complicated than that. The trust doesn't automatically transfer at 18. There are specific requirements that need to be met first." "What kind of requirements?" Dad never mentioned anything like that to me. "Your father was very concerned about ensuring that Tyler developed strong character before gaining access to significant financial resources. The trust includes provisions for demonstrating maturity, responsibility, and what he called family values." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Mom, are you saying Tyler might not get his inheritance?" "I'm saying that Tyler's inheritance is contingent on meeting certain standards that I, as trustee, am responsible for evaluating." "What standards exactly? And what gives you the right to determine whether my son meets them?" Katherine's tone had shifted from curious to defensive, and I could hear echoes of Tyler's entitlement in her voice. This was clearly a family pattern I'd failed to recognize. "Katherine, your father gave me that right explicitly in the trust documents. He believed that character assessment required ongoing observation and relationship, not just legal milestones. This is ridiculous, Mom. Tyler's a good kid. He gets decent grades. He's never been in serious trouble. He's planning to go to college. What more do you want? I want him to understand that wealth is a responsibility, not just a privilege. I want him to demonstrate that he can treat the people who care about him with respect and consideration, not as servants who exist solely for his convenience." What does that even mean? You're talking in circles. I took a deep breath, realizing that this conversation was going to require the same kind of direct honesty I'd used with Tyler. "Katherine, when's the last time Tyler asked about my well-being? When's the last time he showed genuine interest in my life beyond what I could provide for him? When's the last time he demonstrated that he sees me as a complete person rather than just a caregiver?" "Mom, Tyler's 17. Teenagers are naturally self-absorbed. That doesn't mean he's not a good person. Self-absorption is normal for teenagers. Contempt for the people who love them is not." I could hear Katherine's frustration building. "What exactly did Tyler do that has you so upset?" I told her about the NPC conversation, explaining both Tyler's words and the underlying attitude they revealed. I described the months of being treated as a convenience rather than a family member, the casual dismissal of my efforts to connect with him, the complete lack of interest in my existence beyond how it served his needs. Katherine was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Then she said, "Mom, I think you're overreacting. Tyler was probably just being mouthy, the way kids that age are. You can't punish him financially for normal teenage behavior. Katherine, this isn't punishment. This is a natural consequence of demonstrating that he's not ready for the responsibility that comes with significant wealth. He's my son, Mom. I think I know better than you do whether he's ready for his inheritance." The words hit me like a slap, not because they were cruel, but because they revealed how completely Katherine had missed the point of our entire conversation. Like Tyler, she was viewing this situation through the lens of entitlement rather than character development. "Katherine, your father didn't establish this trust to automatically transfer wealth to Tyler regardless of his character. He established it to ensure that Tyler would become the kind of person who could handle wealth responsibly and treat others with dignity and respect. And you've decided he's not that person?" "I've decided he's not that person yet. Whether he becomes that person depends on his choices going forward." Katherine's voice turned cold. "Mom, I want to see those trust documents. I want to understand exactly what authority you think you have here." "Of course. I'll have copies ready when you arrive this weekend." After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen feeling a familiar weight of disappointment. Katherine's reaction had revealed the same attitude Tyler had displayed, the same assumption that family relationships were transactional rather than reciprocal. I'd somehow raised a daughter who believed that love meant giving people what they wanted rather than helping them become who they needed to be. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway a few minutes later, his face showing that he'd indeed overheard at least part of the conversation. "Mom's mad at you," he said quietly. "Yes, she is. Because of the trust fund thing? Because I'm not automatically giving you access to money you haven't earned." Tyler sat down across from me, his expression thoughtful. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Always. If I do change, if I really become a better person, will you believe it? Or will you always think I'm just pretending to get the money?" It was an astute question, one that revealed Tyler had been thinking deeply about the complexities of our situation. "Tyler, authentic change shows itself in behavior patterns over time, not just in isolated moments of improvement. If you become a more thoughtful, empathetic person, it will be evident in how you treat everyone, not just me. How long does that take?" "As long as it takes. Character development isn't a checklist you complete, Tyler. It's an ongoing process of choosing to see other people as fully human and worthy of respect." Tyler nodded slowly. "And if I never change? If I stay selfish and entitled? Then you'll have proven that your grandfather was right to be concerned about giving you access to significant financial resources without proper character development. What happens to the money then? It goes to organizations that work to help people who are struggling, people who understand that resources are precious and should be used to make the world better." Tyler was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, he said, "I don't want to be the kind of person who wastes something that could help other people. Then don't be." That weekend, Katherine arrived with a briefcase full of printed emails and legal research, clearly prepared for battle. She sat at my dining room table reviewing the trust documents, with the intensity of someone looking for loopholes, while Tyler hovered nervously in the background. "Mom, this is incredibly controlling," Katherine said after reading through the relevant sections. "Dad basically gave you complete discretion to decide whether Tyler gets his inheritance, with no objective criteria or appeal process. Your father trusted me to make decisions that would be in Tyler's best long-term interests, yes. But what if you're wrong? What if your personal feelings cloud your judgment?" Katherine's question revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. She was treating this like a legal dispute rather than a family matter, focusing on my authority rather than Tyler's character development. "Katherine, let me ask you something. Do you believe Tyler has been treating me with respect and consideration over the past 2 years?" "I think Tyler's been acting like a normal teenager. That's not what I asked. I asked if you believe he's been treating me with respect and consideration." Katherine shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe not always, but that doesn't mean he deserves to lose his inheritance. And there's the problem. You're framing this as Tyler losing something that was already his, rather than as Tyler needing to earn something he wants." I turned to face Tyler, who had been listening to our conversation with growing discomfort. "Tyler, what do you think? Do you believe you've been treating me with respect and consideration?" Tyler looked between his mother and me, clearly torn between giving the answer Katherine wanted to hear and telling the truth. Finally, he said quietly, "No, I haven't been." Katherine's eyes widened in surprise. "Tyler, you don't have to say that." "But it's true, Mom. I've been treating Grandma like she's just there to take care of me, without thinking about what she might want or need or feel." Tyler's voice grew stronger as he continued. "I called her behavior NPC because I thought she was boring and predictable. But really, I just never bothered to see her as a real person with her own life and interests. Tyler, teenagers are supposed to be self-centered. That's normal development." "Being self-centered is normal," Tyler replied, surprising me with his insight. "Being cruel to people who love you isn't." Katherine looked stunned by her son's response. "Tyler, whose side are you on here?" "I'm not on anyone's side, Mom. I'm trying to figure out how to be a better person." The room fell silent as Katherine processed this unexpected turn in the conversation. She'd come prepared to fight me for Tyler's inheritance, but Tyler himself was acknowledging that he needed to change before he deserved it. "Mom, I want to show you something," Tyler said, pulling out his phone. "I've been keeping track of the things I've learned about Grandma since our talk a few weeks ago." He began reading from his phone. "Her birthday is March 15th. Her favorite color is deep blue, like the hydrangeas Grandpa Robert planted for her in the backyard. She studied literature in college and wanted to be a teacher before she got married. She loves mystery novels and classical music, especially Vivaldi. She used to run a catering business and made the best lemon bars in 3 counties. She's afraid of driving at night now because her vision isn't as good as it used to be, but she's too proud to admit it. She misses Grandpa Robert every single day, but she's grateful for the life they built together." Tyler looked up from his phone. "Mom, I lived with Grandma for 2 years, and I didn't know any of that until I started actually paying attention to her as a person, instead of just as someone who takes care of me." Katherine's expression had shifted from defensive to thoughtful. "Tyler, when did you learn all of this?" "Over the past few weeks when I started asking questions and actually listening to the answers." Tyler put his phone away. "Mom, Grandma was right to question whether I'm ready for the trust fund. I wasn't ready. I might still not be ready, but at least now I understand what being ready would look like." The conversation continued for several more hours, but the tenor had completely changed. Instead of Katherine fighting for Tyler's automatic inheritance, we began discussing what genuine character development would look like, and how to support Tyler's growth into the kind of person his grandfather had hoped he would become. By the end of the weekend, Katherine had a new understanding of both the trust's purpose and her son's journey toward maturity. More importantly, Tyler had demonstrated that his changes over the past few weeks weren't just performance for my benefit, but genuine growth that extended to how he related to his mother as well. As Katherine prepared to return to Seattle, she pulled me aside for a private conversation. "Mom, I owe you an apology. When I first heard about Tyler's situation with the trust fund, I assumed you were being vindictive or controlling. I didn't understand that you were actually protecting him. Protecting him from what? From becoming the kind of person who believes he deserves things without earning them, who treats people as commodities rather than as human beings." Katherine paused. From becoming like his father, frankly. The comparison to Tyler's father was sobering but apt. Tyler's dad had been charming and entitled, someone who took what he wanted from relationships without giving much in return. When the responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood had become inconvenient, he'd simply walked away, leaving Katherine and Tyler to rebuild their lives without him. "Katherine, I want Tyler to have his inheritance, but I want him to be ready for it, to understand that wealth is a tool for building a meaningful life and helping others, not just for personal gratification." "How long do you think that will take?" I considered the question carefully. Tyler has made remarkable progress in just a few weeks, but character development is a long-term process. I'd like to see him maintain these changes through the stress of senior year, college applications, and major life transitions. If he can demonstrate consistent growth and maturity over the next year or two, I think he'll be ready. Katherine nodded. And if he doesn't? If he reverts to his old behavior? Then the money will go to causes that align with our family's values, and Tyler will have learned an important lesson about the consequences of his choices. That seems fair, Katherine said, though I could hear the worry in her voice. Mom, thank you for caring enough about Tyler's character to hold him accountable. I should have been doing that all along. After Katherine left, Tyler and I settled into a new rhythm that felt more balanced and authentic than our previous routine. He continued asking about my day and sharing details about his own life beyond just his immediate needs. He started helping with household tasks, not as assigned chores but as contributions to our shared living space. Most importantly, he began treating me like someone whose opinions and experiences mattered, not just someone who facilitated his daily existence. But real transformation rarely follows a straight line, and Tyler's journey toward genuine maturity was about to face its most significant test yet. The challenge came in the form of Madison Pierce, a new student who transferred to Tyler's school in October. Madison was everything that impressed 17-year-old boys. Strikingly beautiful, confident to the point of arrogance, and from a wealthy family that had moved to Millfield when her father took over as CEO of the largest manufacturing company in town. Within 2 weeks of her arrival, Madison had become the center of attention for every teenage boy at Ridgemont High, and Tyler was completely smitten. I first heard about Madison during one of our evening conversations, when Tyler mentioned that a new girl had joined his advanced placement English class. His casual mention quickly escalated into detailed descriptions of her intelligence, her sophisticated sense of style, and her fascinating insights about literature and philosophy. Within a month, Tyler was talking about Madison constantly, and I could see the warning signs of an intense teenage infatuation that was consuming more and more of his emotional energy. The first red flag appeared when Tyler asked if he could borrow money to take Madison to an expensive restaurant in the city, 40 minutes away from Millfield. The request itself wasn't unreasonable, but his assumption that I would automatically provide funding for his social life revealed that some of his old entitlement patterns were still lurking beneath his recent improvements in behavior. Tyler, I said carefully, I'm happy to help with reasonable expenses, but a dinner that costs more than most people spend on groceries for a week seems excessive for a high school date. His reaction was immediate and intense. Grandma, you don't understand. Madison isn't like other girls. She's used to nice things, and I want to show her that I can provide that kind of experience. The language he used, provide that kind of experience, suggested that Tyler was falling back into transactional thinking about relationships. Instead of focusing on getting to know Madison as a person, he was trying to impress her with displays of wealth and status. Tyler, what do you know about Madison beyond her appearance and her family's financial situation? I know lots of things about her. She's incredibly smart. She reads philosophy for fun. She's traveled all over Europe. She speaks 3 languages fluently. Those are impressive accomplishments. What about her character? How does she treat people who can't do anything for her? How does she handle conflict, or disappointment? What are her values and priorities? Tyler looked frustrated by my questions. Why does all that matter? She's amazing, and I want to take her somewhere special. It matters because genuine relationships are built on compatibility of values and character, not just mutual attraction and shared interests. But Tyler was too caught up in his infatuation to hear what I was saying. Over the next few weeks, his behavior began to shift in ways that concerned me deeply. He became secretive about his activities, spending long hours on his phone texting and calling Madison. He started neglecting his schoolwork and household responsibilities, claiming that his time with Madison was more important than boring stuff like homework and chores. Most troubling was the gradual return of his dismissive attitude toward me. When I asked about his day or tried to engage him in conversation, he would give short, impatient answers before retreating to his room to continue his communications with Madison. The thoughtful, considerate young man who had been emerging over the past few months was disappearing, replaced by someone who seemed to view me once again as an obstacle to his personal happiness. The situation came to a head on a Friday evening in November, when Tyler announced that he would be spending the weekend at Madison's family estate, which was located in the exclusive Hillcrest neighborhood where the wealthiest families in the region maintained their primary residences. "Tyler, you haven't spent a weekend at home in 3 weeks," I pointed out. "I was hoping we could work in the garden together and maybe visit the farmer's market on Saturday morning." "Grandma, I can't just stay home doing old people stuff when Madison wants to spend time with me. She's planning something special for us this weekend." The phrase "old people stuff" hit me like a physical blow. In just a few weeks, Tyler had reverted to seeing my interests and activities as irrelevant and beneath his consideration. The progress we'd made in building a relationship based on mutual respect was evaporating under the influence of his obsession with Madison. "Tyler, what happened to our conversations about treating the people who care about you with consideration and respect?" "This is different, Grandma. You wouldn't understand what it's like to have someone like Madison interested in you." "Help me understand. What makes Madison so special that she justifies abandoning your responsibilities and treating your family with contempt?" Tyler's face flushed with anger. "It's not contempt. It's just that my relationship with Madison is the most important thing in my life right now, and everything else has to work around that." There it was, the same prioritization of his immediate desires over his obligations to others, the same assumption that people who loved him should accommodate his choices without question. Tyler might have learned to ask polite questions about my day, but he hadn't internalized the deeper lesson about considering other people's needs and feelings when making his own decisions. "Tyler, I need you to understand something very clearly. The progress you've made over the past few months in developing empathy and consideration for others isn't just important for our relationship. It's essential for your future success in all relationships, including romantic ones." "What do you mean?" "I mean that if you revert to treating people as conveniences who should accommodate your priorities without reciprocal consideration, you'll eventually destroy every meaningful relationship in your life." Tyler rolled his eyes with exaggerated exasperation. "Grandma, you're being dramatic. Madison understands that relationships require investment and attention. She's not asking me to choose between her and other people, isn't she? Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like spending time with Madison has become incompatible with maintaining your responsibilities and relationships with anyone else." "That's not true. When's the last time you had a conversation with Derek or any of your other friends? When's the last time you completed your homework without rushing through it so you could text Madison? When's the last time you helped with household tasks or spent time with me that wasn't interrupted by your phone?" Tyler's silence told me that my questions had hit their mark. His infatuation with Madison was consuming his attention so completely that he was neglecting every other aspect of his life. "Tyler, I want you to think very carefully about your next decision. You can choose to spend this weekend with Madison, but if you do, you need to understand that you're choosing to prioritize a relationship that's barely 2 months old over your commitments to family and your own personal development. So you're trying to control who I date now? I'm not trying to control anything. I'm pointing out that your choices have consequences, and some of those consequences affect your readiness to handle adult responsibilities, like managing significant financial resources." Tyler's face went pale, as he realized I was talking about the trust fund again. Grandma, you can't judge my character based on who I'm dating. I'm not judging your character based on who you're dating. I'm evaluating your character based on how dating someone has affected your treatment of other people and your commitment to your responsibilities. The conversation ended with Tyler storming out of the house, presumably to spend the weekend with Madison as planned. I spent Saturday working in the garden alone, pulling up the last of the summer vegetables and preparing the beds for winter. The physical work helped me process my disappointment and concern about Tyler's regression. On Sunday evening, Tyler returned home looking exhausted and oddly subdued. His usual enthusiasm for describing his time with Madison was noticeably absent, and he seemed almost relieved to be back in the familiar environment of our house. "How was your weekend?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral and non-judgmental. Tyler shrugged. "It was fine, I guess." "Just fine? You were so excited about Madison's special plans." "Yeah, well, sometimes things don't turn out the way you expect them to." I waited for Tyler to elaborate, but he seemed reluctant to share details. Instead, he asked if there was anything he could help me with around the house, a gesture that felt like an olive branch after our Friday evening conflict. Over the next few days, I noticed subtle changes in Tyler's behavior that suggested his weekend with Madison hadn't gone as smoothly as he'd anticipated. He was still communicating with her regularly, but the manic intensity of his infatuation seemed to have cooled slightly. He began participating in household conversations again, and even suggested we watch a movie together on Wednesday evening. The full story emerged the following weekend when Tyler asked if we could have a serious conversation about relationships and decision-making. We sat in the living room with cups of hot chocolate, and Tyler began recounting his weekend at Madison's house with the kind of detail that suggested he'd been thinking deeply about what had happened. "Grandma, Madison's family is really different from ours," he began hesitantly. "They have this huge house with staff and everything, but it feels more like a hotel than a home. Her parents were there, but they barely interacted with us except to make sure we had everything we needed." "How did that feel? Weird." "Like, I thought it would be cool to experience that kind of luxury, but mostly it felt empty. Madison kept showing me all their expensive stuff, the art collection, the wine cellar, the home theater. But she seemed more interested in impressing me with what they owned than in actually spending time together." Tyler paused, seeming to organize his thoughts before continuing. "And the way she talked about other people was really bothering me. She made fun of the kids at school who don't have designer clothes or expensive cars. She called them basic and irrelevant. She even made comments about you, about how sad it was that I had to live with my grandmother instead of having my own place." I felt a flash of anger at Madison's casual cruelty, but I tried to keep my expression neutral. "How did you respond when she said those things?" "At first I kind of laughed along because I wanted her to like me, but then she started talking about the staff at her house, calling them lazy and stupid, and I realized she was talking about people the same way I used to talk about you." The comparison clearly pained Tyler, and I could see him working through the implications of what he was saying. "She treats people like they're NPCs, doesn't she?" I asked gently. Tyler nodded miserably. "Exactly like that. Everyone who isn't wealthy or important enough to matter to her is just background noise in her life story. And I realized that when I was acting that way toward you, I was becoming exactly like her." "What else happened during the weekend?" "Madison kept talking about all the expensive things she wanted to do together. Trips to Europe, shopping in New York, staying at 5-star resorts. She assumed that I had unlimited money to spend on that kind of lifestyle, and when I mentioned that my finances were complicated, she got really cold and distant." Tyler's voice became quieter as he continued. "She basically said that if I couldn't afford to keep up with her social expectations, maybe we weren't as compatible as she'd thought. It wasn't mean exactly, but it was clear that she saw me as valuable only as long as I could provide the kind of lifestyle she wanted." "How did that make you feel?" "Used. Like I was only important to her because of what I could give her, not because of who I am as a person." Tyler looked up at me with dawning understanding. "That's how I made you feel, isn't it? When I treated you like you only mattered because of what you could do for me?" I reached over and squeezed his hand. Yes, Tyler, that's exactly how it felt. I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm really, really sorry. I thought I understood before, but I didn't really get it until I experienced it myself. Thank you for apologizing. But more importantly, what are you going to do with this understanding going forward? Tyler was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking through his answer carefully. I want to break up with Madison, but I'm scared. She's popular and influential at school, and I'm worried about what she might say about me if I end things. Tyler, what would your grandfather Robert advise you to do in this situation? He'd tell me that doing the right thing is more important than avoiding temporary discomfort. And what do you think is the right thing? Being honest about the fact that Madison and I have different values, and that I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who treats other people like they're disposable. Tyler's insight gave me hope that his recent regression had been a temporary setback rather than a permanent return to his old patterns of thinking. The experience with Madison had taught him lessons about character and relationships that no amount of lecturing from me could have conveyed. Tyler, I'm proud of you for recognizing these patterns and being willing to make difficult decisions based on your values, rather than your immediate desires. Does this mean you think I'm making progress with the whole character development thing? I think you're learning to navigate complex social situations while maintaining your integrity, which is one of the most important skills any person can develop. Tyler did break up with Madison the following week, and as he'd predicted, she didn't handle the rejection gracefully. She spread rumors about Tyler being and immature, and several of her friends began treating him with the kind of social coldness that could make high school feel like a hostile environment. But Tyler handled the situation with remarkable maturity, neither retaliating against Madison nor trying to defend himself through gossip and drama. Instead, he focused on strengthening his friendships with people who valued him for his character, rather than his social status or potential wealth. The experience seemed to accelerate Tyler's personal development in ways that surprised both of us. He became more confident in his own judgment, more selective about the relationships he invested in, and more committed to treating others with the kind of respect and consideration he wanted to receive in return. As winter settled over Millfield, Tyler and I developed new traditions that reflected our improved relationship. We started cooking dinner together on Sunday evenings, trying recipes from different cultures, and discussing everything from literature to philosophy to current events. Tyler introduced me to some of the video games he enjoyed, patiently teaching me the basics and helping me understand why these complex virtual worlds were so engaging for people his age. I shared more stories about my own youth, my marriage to Robert, and the lessons I'd learned about building meaningful relationships and finding purpose in life. Tyler listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and drawing connections between my experiences and his own challenges and goals. But our newfound harmony was about to face its most serious test yet, in the form of an unexpected revelation that would force both of us to confront questions about family loyalty, financial responsibility, and the true meaning of justice. The crisis began with a phone call from Katherine on a cold December morning. Her voice was strained with anxiety as she explained that she was facing a financial emergency that threatened to destroy everything she'd worked to build in Seattle. "Mom, I need to ask you for something, and I know it's going to sound crazy, but I'm desperate," Katherine said, her words tumbling over each other in her rush to explain. "The company I work for is going through a merger, and they're eliminating my entire department. I have savings, but not enough to cover my mortgage and living expenses while I look for a new job in this market." I made appropriate sympathetic sounds while Katherine continued describing her situation. She'd been living comfortably in Seattle, perhaps too comfortably given her income level, and the sudden loss of employment had exposed the vulnerability of her financial position. "Katherine, I'm so sorry to hear about your job. How can I help?" "Mom, I need to borrow money from Tyler's trust fund. Just temporarily until I can get back on my feet. I know Dad set up specific guidelines, but this is an emergency, and Tyler would want to help his mother." The request hit me like a physical blow. Katherine was asking me to violate the explicit terms of Robert's trust to solve her immediate financial problems, essentially using Tyler's inheritance as a personal loan. "Katherine, you know I can't do that. The trust funds are specifically designated for Tyler's future, with very clear restrictions on how and when they can be accessed. But you're the trustee. You have discretionary authority to make decisions about distributions. I have authority to make decisions about Tyler's readiness to receive his inheritance, not to redirect the funds for other purposes. Katherine's voice took on a pleading quality that reminded me uncomfortably of Tyler's manipulation attempts. Mom, this is different. This is family. Tyler will still get his money eventually, but right now I need help, and the trust is just sitting there earning interest. Katherine, if I start using Tyler's inheritance to solve family financial problems, where does it end? What happens when someone else has an emergency? What happens when Tyler discovers that his money has been used for purposes his grandfather never intended? Tyler doesn't have to know. This would just be between us. The suggestion that I keep financial secrets from Tyler revealed how little Katherine understood the progress we'd made in building a relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. Katherine, I can't and won't use Tyler's inheritance money for anything other than its intended purpose. Fine, Katherine said, her tone shifting from pleading to angry. But I want you to remember this conversation when I lose my house and have to declare bankruptcy. I want you to remember that you chose money over your own daughter's welfare. The accusation was deeply painful, but it also revealed Katherine's fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. I wasn't choosing money over her welfare. I was choosing to honor Robert's intentions and protect Tyler's future over Katherine's immediate convenience. After Katherine hung up, I sat in my kitchen feeling the weight of a decision that had no entirely satisfactory resolution. I could help Katherine with my own savings, though doing so would significantly impact my own financial security. But I could not and would not violate the trust that Robert had placed in me to protect Tyler's inheritance. Tyler found me there an hour later, staring into my coffee cup and wrestling with the implications of Katherine's request. Grandma, you look upset. What's wrong? I looked at Tyler's concerned face and made a decision that would test everything we'd built together over the past few months. I told him about Katherine's situation, her request for access to the trust funds, and my refusal to grant that access. Tyler listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly serious as he understood the complexity of the situation. So Mama's in trouble and she wants to use my inheritance money to solve her problems? That's essentially what she's asking, yes. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. Then he said something that completely surprised me. Grandma, what if I want to help her? What if I think the money should be used to help Mom? The question forced me to confront a scenario I hadn't considered. What if Tyler, despite all his growth and development, decided that family loyalty required sacrificing his inheritance to solve Katherine's immediate problems? Tyler, that's a decision you can make when you gain access to the trust funds, but not before. Until that time, I have a legal and moral obligation to protect those resources according to your grandfather's wishes. But what if Mom loses her house? What if she ends up homeless because we have money sitting in accounts that could help her? Tyler's questions revealed his compassionate nature, but they also showed that he was still learning to distinguish between helping people and enabling poor decision-making. Tyler, tell me what you know about your mother's financial situation before she lost her job. I know she lives in a nice apartment in a good neighborhood, she has a car payment, she goes out to restaurants a lot, she takes vacations a couple times a year. Does any of that sound like someone who was living within her means and preparing for potential emergencies? Tyler's face showed his internal conflict as he processed my question. You're saying Mom got herself into this situation by spending too much money? I'm saying that financial emergencies are often the result of financial choices made over time, not just sudden unexpected events. But she's still my mom. Doesn't family loyalty mean helping when someone is in trouble? Tyler, there's a difference between helping someone through a genuine crisis and enabling someone to avoid the consequences of their own decisions. Which do you think this situation represents? Tyler struggled with the question for several minutes before answering. I think it might be both. Mom is really in trouble, but maybe she could have avoided the trouble if she'd made different choices. And what do you think your grandfather Robert would say about using your inheritance to solve problems that could have been prevented with better financial planning? He'd probably say that giving people money without requiring them to change their behavior doesn't actually help them in the long run. Tyler's insight showed remarkable maturity, but I could see that he was still wrestling with the emotional weight of potentially watching his mother struggle financially while he had access to resources that could help her. Grandma, what if we offered to help Mom in other ways? Like what if she moved back here temporarily while she looks for a new job? She could save money on rent, and we could support her while she gets back on her feet. The suggestion showed Tyler's growing ability to think creatively about problem solving while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Offering Katherine temporary housing and emotional support would address her immediate needs without compromising the integrity of the trust fund. That's a very thoughtful suggestion, Tyler. How do you think your mother would respond to that offer? She probably wouldn't like it. Mom has always been kind of proud about accepting help, and moving back to her hometown would feel like admitting failure. But would it actually be failure? Or would it be a practical response to a difficult situation? It would be practical, but Mom might not see it that way. Tyler's understanding of his mother's psychology was astute, and it prepared us both for Katherine's reaction. When we called to offer alternative forms of support, Katherine rejected the offer of temporary housing immediately, and with considerable anger. She accused me of being controlling and manipulative, of using Tyler's inheritance as leverage to force her into decisions she didn't want to make. She claimed that offering her a place to stay was insulting and demeaning, a way of treating her like a child who couldn't manage her own life. Mom, I don't understand why you won't consider options that could actually help you, Tyler said during the three-way call. Moving back here temporarily would solve your immediate housing costs and give you time to find a good job without financial pressure. Tyler, I'm 45 years old. I'm not going to move back in with my mother like some kind of failure who can't take care of herself. But you're willing to take money from my trust fund? The question hung in the air with uncomfortable clarity. Katherine wanted financial assistance that would allow her to maintain her independence and lifestyle, but she wasn't willing to accept help that came with practical compromises or acknowledgement of her own role in creating her current situation. That's different, Tyler. The trust fund money is family money. It's not charity. But it's my money, not yours, Tyler said with gentle firmness. And Grandpa Robert set up specific rules about when and how I can access it. Katherine's response revealed the depth of her entitlement and misunderstanding. Tyler, I'm your mother. I sacrificed years of my life raising you, and now when I need help, you're going to hide behind legal technicalities? I'm not hiding behind anything, Mom. I'm trying to understand the difference between helping you and enabling you to avoid making difficult but necessary changes. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Katherine becoming increasingly angry and accusatory. She accused Tyler of being brainwashed by me, of caring more about money than family, of abandoning her in her time of greatest need. But Tyler held firm, maintaining his position that the trust fund money should be used according to Robert's intentions, while offering alternative forms of support that Katherine was unwilling to accept. After we ended the call, Tyler and I sat in heavy silence, both of us processing the painful reality that Katherine's financial crisis was revealing character issues we'd previously overlooked or minimized. Grandma, I feel terrible about Mom's situation, but I also feel like she's trying to manipulate me into doing something I know is wrong. What makes you think it's wrong? Because if I give her money now to solve this problem, what happens the next time she makes financial decisions that put her in trouble? And the time after that? Do I just keep rescuing her forever? Tyler's analysis showed sophisticated understanding of the difference between helping and enabling, between genuine emergencies and predictable consequences of poor planning. Tyler, making difficult decisions about family relationships is one of the hardest parts of becoming an adult. Sometimes love requires saying no to people we care about when their requests would be harmful to them or to us. Is that what you're doing with the trust fund? Loving me by saying no to things that would be harmful? Yes, but the decision about whether you're ready for that responsibility is ultimately mine to make based on observing your character development over time. And what do you think about my character based on how I've handled the situation with Mom? I considered Tyler's question carefully. His response to Katherine's request had demonstrated empathy without manipulation, creative problem-solving, and the ability to maintain appropriate boundaries despite emotional pressure. I think you've shown remarkable maturity in a very difficult situation. You've demonstrated concern for your mother's welfare while refusing to compromise your own values or enable destructive behavior. Does that mean you think I'm getting closer to being ready for the trust fund? It means I think you're learning to navigate complex ethical decisions with wisdom and integrity, which are essential qualities for anyone managing significant financial resources. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. Grandma, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Always. Do you think I'm ready now, or do you think I still need more time? The question forced me to evaluate everything I'd observed about Tyler's development over the past 6 months. His growth had been substantial and seemed genuine, but character development required consistency over time, especially when facing various types of pressure and temptation. Tyler, I think you've made enormous progress, and I'm proud of the young man you're becoming. But I also think that 18 months of sustained growth and maturity would give me greater confidence in the permanence of these changes. Quote, 18 months? That would put me at almost 19, past my high school graduation. Yes, it would. Character assessment isn't just about demonstrating good judgment in isolated situations. It's about proving that good judgment has become your default response to various challenges over an extended period of time. Tyler considered this explanation without apparent resentment or disappointment. That makes sense. I want to be sure I'm ready too, not just think I'm ready. What would you want to accomplish during those 18 months to demonstrate your readiness? Tyler's face brightened as he considered the possibilities. I want to maintain good relationships with family and friends, even when it's difficult. I want to do well in my senior year and get into a good college. I want to show that I can handle increasing responsibility without reverting to my old selfish behaviors. Those are excellent goals. What else? I want to learn more about managing money responsibly, maybe get a part-time job, and demonstrate that I can budget and save. I want to volunteer somewhere, show that I understand wealth comes with obligations to help other people. Tyler's response revealed that he was thinking about the trust fund, not just as money he wanted to access, but as a responsibility he wanted to be worthy of handling. Tyler, I want you to know that my decision about the timeline isn't punishment or arbitrary control. It's based on my genuine desire to see you succeed not just financially, but as a person who uses resources wisely and treats others with consistent respect and consideration. I understand, Grandma, and I appreciate that you care enough about my future to make the hard decisions, even when they disappoint me or make other people angry. Our conversation was interrupted by Tyler's phone ringing. Katherine's name appeared on the screen, and Tyler looked at me questioningly. Answer it, I said. But remember that you don't have to solve other people's problems by compromising your own values. Tyler answered the phone with visible trepidation. Katherine's voice was loud enough that I could hear her angry words even from across the room. Tyler, I've been thinking about our conversation, and I realize your grandmother has been poisoning you against me. She's turned you into someone who cares more about money than family. Mom, that's not true. Grandma has helped me understand the importance of making responsible decisions, even when they're difficult. Tyler, I'm your mother. I raised you, I sacrificed for you, and now when I need your help, you're refusing because some old woman has convinced you to be selfish. The phrase, some old woman, struck me as particularly cruel, reducing my relationship with Tyler to that of an interfering outsider rather than a family member who'd cared for him for years. Mom, Grandma isn't some old woman. She's the person who took care of me when you couldn't, and she's teaching me how to be a better person. I could take care of you just fine if I had access to the money your grandfather left for our family. He left it for me, Mom, not for the family. For me when I'm ready to handle it responsibly. Katherine's voice became even more shrill. Tyler, if you don't help me now, I might lose everything. Is that what you want? Is that what your grandmother wants? I want you to accept help in ways that will actually solve your problems, instead of just postponing them. Grandma and I both want to support you, but not in ways that enable poor financial decisions. You're both going to regret this, Katherine said before hanging up abruptly. Tyler stared at his phone for a moment, then looked at me with troubled eyes. Grandma, what if Mom really does lose her house? What if something terrible happens to her because we didn't help? Tyler, what have we learned about the difference between helping and enabling? That helping someone means supporting them in making positive changes, while enabling means preventing them from experiencing the natural consequences of their choices. And which category do you think giving your mother money without requiring her to address her spending patterns would fall into? Enabling, Tyler said reluctantly. But it still feels awful to watch someone you love struggle. It is awful. Loving someone sometimes requires allowing them to face difficulties that might motivate necessary changes. That doesn't mean we don't care. It means we care enough to refuse to perpetuate destructive patterns. Tyler nodded slowly, but I could see that he was still wrestling with the emotional weight of the decision. Grandma, how do you know when you're making the right choice in situations like this? You ask yourself whether your decision will help the person become stronger and more capable, or whether it will make them more dependent and less likely to develop their own problem-solving skills. And you think giving Mom money from the trust fund would make her more dependent? I think it would teach her that financial emergencies can be solved by accessing other people's resources rather than by making sustainable changes to her own financial management. Tyler was quiet for several minutes, clearly processing the complexity of the situation and its implications for his own future relationships and decisions. Grandma, I want to be the kind of person who helps others become stronger, not someone who enables weakness. Then you're already demonstrating the kind of character your grandfather hoped you would develop. The crisis with Katherine continued for several more weeks, during which she alternated between angry accusations and emotional manipulation designed to pressure Tyler and me into releasing trust fund money. She threatened to cut off contact with Tyler, accused me of alienating her son's affections, and claimed that we were both heartless and selfish. But Tyler held firm throughout these difficult weeks, offering emotional support and practical assistance, while refusing to compromise the integrity of the trust fund. He researched job opportunities in Katherine's field and emailed her relevant listings. He found information about financial counseling services and debt management programs. He offered to help her create a budget and develop a plan for living within her means. Katherine rejected all of these forms of assistance, insisting that her only real need was immediate access to cash that would allow her to maintain her current lifestyle while looking for employment. Eventually, Katherine did find a new job, though it paid significantly less than her previous position and required her to move to a smaller, less expensive apartment. She remained angry with Tyler and me for refusing to provide financial assistance during her transition, but her experience of navigating the crisis independently seemed to teach her valuable lessons about the importance of maintaining emergency savings and living below her means. The entire experience served as a powerful learning opportunity for Tyler, demonstrating the complexity of family relationships and the importance of maintaining healthy boundaries even with people you love deeply. As winter turned to spring, Tyler's character development continued to accelerate. He maintained excellent grades, developed meaningful friendships with people who shared his values, and began volunteering at a local literacy program where he helped elementary school children improve their reading skills. Most importantly, he demonstrated consistent empathy and consideration in his daily interactions, not just with me, but with everyone he encountered. I watched him help elderly neighbors with their groceries, listen patiently to his friends' problems, and treat service workers with the kind of respect that indicated genuine understanding that all people deserve dignity, regardless of their social status. By the time Tyler graduated from high school that June, I was beginning to believe that he was indeed becoming the kind of person his grandfather had hoped he would be, someone who understood that privilege came with responsibility, that wealth was a tool for building meaningful relationships and contributing to the greater good, not just for personal gratification. But Tyler's final test was still ahead of him, and it would come in a form that neither of us expected. Tyler's final test arrived 3 weeks before his 18th birthday, in the form of an unexpected visit from his father Marcus, the man who had abandoned our family 6 years earlier without explanation or apology. I was working in my rose garden on a humid Saturday morning in August when a sleek black BMW pulled into my driveway. The man who emerged was older and grayer than I remembered, but unmistakably Marcus Wellington, the charming manipulator who had broken Katherine's heart and left Tyler feeling worthless and unwanted. Tyler was at his summer job at the community center, teaching swimming lessons to children, so Marcus's timing seemed deliberately calculated to catch me alone. He approached with the same confident smile that had once convinced my daughter to marry him, despite my reservations about his character and motivations. "Eleanor," he said, extending his hand as if we were old friends meeting for lunch. "You look wonderful. The years have been kind to you. I stood slowly, my gardening gloves still dirty with soil, and studied the man who had caused so much pain to my family. Marcus! This is unexpected. I know I should have called first, but I was in the area on business and thought it was time Tyler and I reconnected. He's almost 18 now, practically an adult. The casual way Marcus dismissed 6 years of absence, as if fatherhood were a hobby he could pick up and abandon at will, confirmed my worst memories of his character. Tyler isn't here at the moment. He's working. Working? That's great to hear. I always knew he'd turn out to be responsible and hard-working, just like his old man. The audacity of Marcus claiming credit for Tyler's character development was breathtaking, but I kept my expression neutral. What brings you to Millfield, Marcus? Business opportunities, mainly. I've been very successful in real estate development over the past few years, and I'm looking at some properties in this area. He gestured toward the house with proprietary familiarity. This old place must be worth quite a bit now, with the housing market being what it is. I felt a chill of understanding. Marcus hadn't come to reconnect with his son, out of paternal love or guilt over his abandonment. He'd come because Tyler was approaching 18, and he knew about the trust fund. How did you know Tyler was living here? Katherine mentioned it during one of our conversations. We've been talking more frequently lately, trying to work through some of our past issues. This was news to me, and deeply troubling news at that. Katherine had never mentioned resuming contact with Marcus, and the timing of his sudden interest in reconciliation seemed suspiciously connected to Tyler's approaching birthday. Marcus, Tyler has built a good life here. He's doing well in school, he has plans for college, he's developing into a young man of genuine character and integrity. I'm sure he is. Katherine always said you were a wonderful influence on him. Marcus's tone was patronizing, as if he were humoring an elderly relative. But Tyler needs his father in his life now. He's about to become an adult, and there are important decisions he'll need to make about his future. The emphasis on important decisions confirmed my suspicions about Marcus's motivations. He knew about the trust fund, and he was positioning himself to influence Tyler's choices once he gained access to those resources. What kind of decisions are you referring to? Marcus smiled with the kind of calculated charm I remembered from his courtship of Katherine. Investment opportunities, career planning, maybe some travel to broaden his horizons. A young man with Tyler's advantages shouldn't be limited by small-town thinking. The phrase small-town thinking was clearly meant to dismiss my influence and perspective, painting me as provincial and limiting compared to Marcus's sophisticated worldliness. Tyler seems quite content with his current situation and plans. Of course he does, he's never known anything else. But there's a whole world of possibilities out there for someone with his potential and resources. Before I could respond, Tyler's voice called from the front yard. Grandma, whose car is that in the driveway? Marcus's face lit up with anticipation, and I felt a surge of protective anxiety for my grandson. Tyler was emotionally mature for his age, but he was still a 17-year-old boy who had never stopped hoping his father might someday return and explain his abandonment. Tyler rounded the corner of the house, still wearing his community center polo shirt and carrying his swim instructor certification folder. When he saw Marcus, he stopped dead in his tracks, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been hope. Dad? Tyler, look at you, son. You've grown into quite the young man. Marcus stepped forward with arms outstretched, but Tyler remained frozen, clearly struggling to process this unexpected encounter with the father, who had been absent from his life for 6 years. What are you doing here? Tyler's voice was carefully neutral, neither welcoming nor hostile. I came to see you, of course. I know I've been absent, and I regret that more than you can imagine. But I'm here now, and I want to be part of your life again. I watched Tyler's face carefully, looking for signs of the emotional vulnerability that Marcus might exploit. But instead of the eager acceptance I'd feared, Tyler's expression remained guarded and analytical. Where have you been for 6 years? Marcus had clearly prepared for this question. Building a life I could be proud of, son. Starting a business. establishing myself financially, becoming the kind of father you deserve to have. You couldn't do that while staying in touch with me? The directness of Tyler's questions seemed to catch Marcus off guard. It's complicated, Tyler. Adult relationships are messy, and I didn't want to put you in the middle of the conflict between your mother and me. What conflict? You left. Mom didn't ask you to leave, you just disappeared. Marcus's smile faltered slightly. There were issues you were too young to understand at the time. But that's all in the past now. What matters is that we're here together, and we have the chance to build a real father-son relationship. Tyler looked at me, and I could see him weighing Marcus's words against his own memories and experiences. Dad, why now? Why come back now, right before my 18th birthday? Because you're becoming an adult, and I want to be part of that transition. I want to help you navigate the choices and opportunities that lie ahead. What opportunities? Marcus's enthusiasm became more obvious as he sensed an opening. Tyler, you're about to inherit significant wealth. That kind of money opens doors to experiences and possibilities most people can only dream of. I want to help you make the most of those opportunities. There it was, the real reason for Marcus's sudden return. Not love for his son, not guilt over his abandonment, but greed for the resources Tyler would soon control. Tyler's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. How do you know about my inheritance? Your mother mentioned it. We've been talking about what's best for your future. And what do you think is best for my future? Marcus launched into a prepared speech about investment opportunities, international travel, elite educational experiences, and business ventures that would multiply Tyler's inheritance exponentially. He painted a picture of a glamorous lifestyle filled with luxury and sophistication, very different from the quiet, purposeful life Tyler had been building in Millfield. Throughout Marcus's presentation, Tyler listened without comment, his face betraying no emotional reaction. When Marcus finally finished, Tyler was quiet for a long moment before responding. Dad, let me ask you something. What do you know about who I am now? Not who I was when you left, but who I've become over the past 6 years. Marcus looked uncertain for the first time since his arrival. I know you're intelligent and capable just like you. Always were. But what do I care about? What are my interests, my goals, my values? What kind of person have I become? Well, I assume you're interested in the same things most young men your age care about. Fun, freedom, new experiences. Tyler's slight smile was knowing and sad. You don't actually know anything about me, do you? Tyler, I know more than you might think. I know you're about to have access to resources that could change your entire life trajectory. And you want to help me manage those resources? I want to help you maximize their potential, yes. Tyler nodded slowly, as if Marcus had confirmed something he'd already suspected. Dad, I appreciate you coming here, but I think you should know that my inheritance isn't automatic. There are conditions I have to meet first. Marcus's confident expression wavered. What kind of conditions? Character conditions. I have to demonstrate that I'm mature enough and responsible enough to handle significant wealth without letting it corrupt me or make me forget my obligations to other people. That's ridiculous. You're entitled to that money by birthright. No, I'm not. Grandpa Robert was very clear that wealth should be earned through character development, not just inherited through family connection. Marcus turned to me with barely concealed anger. Eleanor, you can't seriously be considering denying Tyler his inheritance over some arbitrary moral test. I'm not denying Tyler anything, Marcus. I'm ensuring that he's ready for the responsibility that comes with significant financial resources. And who made you the judge of his character? His grandfather did, when he appointed me as trustee and gave me discretionary authority over the distribution of funds. Marcus's mask of charm finally slipped completely, revealing the entitled anger beneath. This is insane. Tyler is about to turn 18. He should have control over his own money. Marcus, Tyler said quietly, the money isn't mine until I prove I deserve it. And honestly, after 6 years of you not caring whether I lived or died, I'm not sure I want financial advice from someone who abandoned his family when things got difficult. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Tyler, that's not fair. I never abandoned you. I just needed time to get my life together. For 6 years? Without a single phone call or birthday card or any sign that you remembered I existed, I was protecting you from the conflict between your mother and me. That's bullshit, Dad, and you know it. Tyler's voice remained calm, but his words were devastatingly direct. You left because being a father was inconvenient for you. And now you're back because you think being my father might be profitable. Marcus's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. Tyler, I came here to reconnect with my son, not to be attacked and insulted. Then you should have come here 6 years ago, when your son needed you. Not now, when your son has something you want. The confrontation continued for another 20 minutes, with Marcus alternating between emotional manipulation, angry demands, and renewed attempts at charm. But Tyler remained unmoved, seeing through each strategy with the clarity that comes from hard-won emotional maturity. Finally, Marcus played his last card. Tyler, I'm your father. That has to count for something. Tyler considered this statement with the seriousness it deserved before responding. Being a father isn't about biology, Dad. It's about showing up, day after day, caring about someone else's welfare more than your own convenience. Grandma has been more of a parent to me over the past 6 years than you ever were. She's not your parent, Tyler. She's an old woman who's trying to control your life and your money. The insult to me was clearly intended to provoke Tyler into an emotional reaction, but instead it seemed to crystallize his understanding of the situation. Dad, Grandma has spent the past year teaching me the difference between people who love me and people who want to use me. You've just made it very clear which category you fall into. Marcus left shortly after that, his parting words a mixture of threats about legal action and promises that Tyler would regret choosing me over his real family. But Tyler seemed unaffected by either the threats or the promises, having seen through his father's motivations with remarkable clarity. After Marcus's car disappeared down the street, Tyler and I sat on the front porch, swinging in comfortable silence, processing what had just transpired. Grandma, how did you know he was coming for the money? Experience, unfortunately. Some people reveal their true character when they think significant resources are at stake. I used to fantasize about him coming back and explaining everything, making it all make sense. And how do you feel now that he has? Tyler was quiet for a moment. Relieved, actually. I spent years wondering if I'd done something wrong, if I wasn't good enough to make him want to stay. But seeing him today, I realize his leaving had nothing to do with me and everything to do with who he is as a person. That's a profound realization, Tyler. Grandma, I want you to know that even if I never get access to the trust fund, these past 2 years with you have been worth more than any amount of money. The simple honesty of Tyler's statement moved me deeply. This was the young man his grandfather had hoped he would become. Someone who understood that relationships were more valuable than resources, that character was more important than wealth. Tyler, I think it's time we had a conversation about your readiness to receive your inheritance. His eyes widened slightly. Really? You think I'm ready? I think you've demonstrated remarkable growth and maturity, especially in how you handled today's situation with your father. You saw through his manipulation, maintained your integrity under pressure, and chose loyalty to the people who have actually cared for you over the false promise of easy money and glamorous experiences. Tyler's face lit up with excitement before growing serious again. But you said 18 months of sustained growth. It's only been about a year. Tyler, character assessment isn't just about following arbitrary timelines. It's about recognizing when someone has internalized the values and principles that will guide them throughout their life. Today proved to me that you understand the difference between people who love you and people who want to use you, and that you'll make decisions based on integrity rather than convenience. So what happens now? Now we begin the process of gradually transferring control of the trust to you, starting with smaller amounts that will allow you to practice responsible financial management while you complete your education. Tyler hugged me tightly, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for caring enough about my character to make me earn this. Thank you for becoming the kind of person who deserves it. As we sat together watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey we'd taken together from that first painful conversation about NPC behavior to this moment of mutual respect and genuine affection. Tyler had learned that real relationships require seeing other people as complete human beings worthy of consideration and respect. I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to give them what they want until they become who they need to be. The story could have ended there, with Tyler gaining access to his inheritance and living happily ever after. But the most important lessons often come from what happens next, after the dramatic moments have passed and the real work of living according to your values begins. Tyler used his inheritance wisely, funding his education at a prestigious university where he studied business and philanthropy. He started a nonprofit organization focused on financial literacy education for young people, using his own experience as an example of how character development was essential for responsible wealth management. Katherine eventually reconciled with both Tyler and me, though it took years for her to understand that our refusal to enable her financial irresponsibility had actually been an act of love rather than cruelty. She learned to live within her means and develop her own emergency savings, skills that served her well when she faced future challenges. Marcus made several more attempts to reconnect with Tyler over the years, always coinciding with major financial milestones or business opportunities. But Tyler had learned to recognize manipulative behavior and maintained firm boundaries with his father, while remaining open to the possibility of genuine reconciliation if Marcus ever demonstrated authentic change. Most importantly, Tyler internalized the lessons about relationships and character that his grandfather had hoped he would learn. He surrounded himself with people who valued him for who he was, rather than what he could provide. He used his wealth to create opportunities for others and to support causes that aligned with his values. He treated everyone he encountered with the dignity and respect that his grandfather had believed all people deserved. And sometimes, when Tyler encounters young people who remind him of his former self, entitled and dismissive of others, he shares his story about learning the difference between being the main character of your own life and recognizing that everyone else is the main character of theirs too. The real treasure wasn't the money his grandfather left him. It was the wisdom to understand that wealth without character is worthless, and that the people who love you enough to hold you accountable are more valuable than all the people who tell you what you want to hear. Looking back, I realized that Tyler calling me an NPC was one of the best things that ever happened to our relationship. It forced both of us to examine our assumptions about family, respect, and the true meaning of love. And in the end, we both learned that the most important game to master isn't the one where you accumulate the most resources or achieve the highest status. It's the one where you become the kind of person others can trust, respect, and genuinely care about. That, after all, is what makes life worth playing. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.